Welcome, everyone, to the Innate Wellbeing podcast. We're back with another episode, and this time we have a very special guest. His name is Dr. Dicken. He is a psychologist, a very talented psychologist, and he comes from a company that he created called Three Principles Mentoring. He's created an awesome book called Coming Home. I have it here, and um, Dicken has been pretty awesome to see. I've been watching him on YouTube videos, and he comes from being personally mentored by Sydney Banks, which was the man that I mentioned in the intro, and he's definitely changed my life. And I'd love to hand it over to you, Dicken, to give an introduction of yourself.
I have a new puppy, which is all kinds of fun. I've been married 53 years, and I'm glad I've learned what I'm going to talk about today, because it sure helped make us have an amazing relationship. I have 2 kids. I have 4 grandkids. I live in a beautiful Northwest Pacific corner of the United States. And I get to travel around the world and do webinars and seminars and about well-being. I became a psychologist 43 years ago, and I never really saw people as illnesses. I just saw people, and sometimes we all struggle. So I ended up finding a university that trained psychologists in the education department. And the whole theory was that if someone's having difficulty, it's not their fault. They just haven't learned what they need to learn in order to have an easier time of things. So that was still is my philosophy. I see myself as an educator. And my whole career, I focused on well-being. I was very, very interested in well-being, both spiritual and psychological well-being. And I was very fortunate, after I had been working for 10 years as a psychologist, I heard about and then met a man named Sydney Banks. And I think Robert's talked to you about him, but he was the most ordinary, down-to-earth man I've ever met. And he was also the most extraordinary man I've ever met. He had a very rare, spontaneous enlightenment experience. So he talked with deep conviction from his own experience and realizations. And he taught that there's a connection between the formless nature of life, the formless energy that is life, and that which is taken form. So the connection between the spiritual and the psychological. He brought those 2 worlds back together again, because for hundreds of years in psychology, the source of our experience was left out of the equation. So psychology was only left at examining thought content, conscious or unconscious, feelings and emotions, and behavior. In other words, things that had already been created. And Sid says, we're way better off if we want to access well-being, to get interested in and explore where our experience is coming from, and step into that dimension of our being, since we're human beings, is the being part of humans. And so it intrigued me right from the get-go. And the results I started getting with clients was remarkable. I used to think it would take a very long time for someone to fundamentally change how they are in the world. The philosophy back then was it took a long time to get messed up. It'll take you a long time to develop your well-being. And Sid basically said, that's just not true. Our well-being is fully developed. It just gets covered over by all the thinking that we get caught up in. And so I've been exploring that for the last 33 years. I was lucky to be able to work directly with Sid for 23 years before he passed away about 10 years ago.
And what was your life like before finding Sid, before finding the principles, when you were, like you said, delving into the contents of the thought versus tapping into this, what I like to call innate well-being?
It was a lot of hard work, Robert, which I thought was absolutely necessary and essential to develop well-being. So I was meditating 4 hours a day. I trained myself to wake up at the end of REM sleep at each stage during the night and would write down my dreams. So the next day I had 5 full-length dreams to work on from my studies of cognitive psychology. I also was writing down the thoughts I was having during the day and would reframe them and try and upgrade my thinking. I had affirmation notebooks. I read at least 3 books in the field of psychology every week, all of which gave more suggestions for things to do to gain well-being. And it was based on the fundamental premise that life can damage us and we can lose our well-being and we have to work to get it back. So I was doing the work. I was sleeping about 4 hours a night. My wife used to say, I've never met anybody who works harder on themselves than you do. And I thought that was a real compliment. And she basically says, you're obsessed with yourself. I wish you'd come out and play with your family a little more. So I had a wife and I had 2 kids. When I met Sid Banks, my daughter was 13, my son was 8, and I loved them to pieces, but I was a preoccupied professional. Was always thinking about my work, and it was all with good intentions. I mean, I genuinely wanted to find out what I could share with people that would make their lives easier. So I was an ardent explorer, you might say.
And when did the exploring shift to being, like you said? Where was the sort of tipping point for you to go from that mode of, like you said, affirmation books, dream books, analyzing your thoughts, 4 hours of meditation? What was the big shift for you?
Listening to Sid Banks. He had enormous certainty that each human being is like a wave on the ocean of life, and that the psychological part of a human being is just the tip of the wave, and that we're connected to the energy of life, and that from his enlightenment experience, I mean, we've all heard about people who have near-death experiences,
Mm-hmm.
and go into a tunnel of light. I mean, all over the world, these experiences are almost identical. People go into this field of light or a tunnel of light. They have experiences of love more profound than they've ever had in their life before. The light that they enter into is the most beautiful thing they've ever seen. And then they realize that they're not done with physical life yet. So people go partway into this tunnel, but then they come back. And for many people, it's life-changing. And there are so many books written about this. Well, we asked Sid if he had near-death experience. He says, well, I went into that light, but I went all the way through to the other side. I experienced what death is like. And there are books written in spiritual traditions, and they call it ego death. But usually it's after years and years and years of practice and working with teachers. And here this happened spontaneously to a guy with a 9th grade education from Scotland with who didn't like to read, and he was a welder in a pulp mill in Canada.
It's not your typical. That's not your typical image when you think of.
It wasn't mine. Wasn't mine. I mean, I love studying world religions and worked with different teachers in terms of meditation, and he just didn't fit the mold in any way. He was a down to earth. Later on, he called himself, I'm just a retired welder. And I've realized something true about the very nature of life. And he was the first person to say there are 3 fundamental principles that can explain every bit of human psychology. And you have to understand, psychology had never, ever, ever had principles. When I met Sid Banks, there were something like 450 different approaches to therapy, and every approach had a different theoretical foundation and talked about things in different ways. And Sid realized what's fundamentally true about how human experience is created. And it's turning out to be a revolution in psychology and psychiatry. It's a whole new paradigm that once again includes the formless nature of life. You know, scientists are all agreeing on this. Like in quantum physics, they talk about the quantum field as an infinite field of energy full of information, because out of that nothingness, everything arises on a subatomic level. It's matter on a subatomic level is a temporary condensation of energy. But there's a source, which is this field. And the scientists at NASA, the North American Space Agency, who have been studying the energy of the universe, these are some of the top scientists in the world. And they just came out with a research study saying that if you measure the energy of everything in the universe that has form, whether it's seen with the largest telescopes or whether it's measured, seen by the most powerful microscopes. So from a subatomic level to the largest stars in the universe, you put all of the matter together. Robert, take a guess what percentage of the universe they say that comprises.
99.9999%.
4%.
Well,
and that the 96% of the rest of the energy in the universe is what they call dark energy, which is formless, can't be seen, or dark matter, which is formless. But out of this field of energy, things are created. That's the mystery of life. And that's what science is now eventually discovering. And it's what the mystics throughout the centuries, throughout the ages, have realized through direct experience.
Yeah.
So in my first time listening to Sid Banks, when he would say, what we think and feel is just the surface of who we are as human beings. And that beyond our intellect and beyond our physical being is this life energy that we're connected to. And that's where our thinking and feelings come from. In other words, 100% of what we are experiencing that becomes the reality that we're living in from when we're born until we die, 100% comes from this source. So the what he called the principle of universal mind, which is the source of life, you call it universal energy. You can call it anything you want to, but there's some field of infinite field of formless energy that is the foundation or the matrix of the universe. And then anything created out of this field of energy has awareness. So it's a conscious field. He called that the principle of consciousness. And it will create specific things. And in human beings, what that energy creates is mental activity. And whatever thoughts are created in us, that's what we feel at any moment. So 100% of what we feel and experience via our senses is created by the power of thought. 100%. No one else was saying that. Sid says, no, if you're sad, it's because you're experiencing sad thoughts. If you're anxious, it's anxious thoughts. At that point, there were so many theories about where experience comes from. Our circumstance, other people, the past, our personality, our biochemistry, our genetics, our DNA, all these theories. And he's saying, whatever you're feeling is being created by what you're thinking. That was one of the realizations that he had. And boy, has that made a difference in my life and the lives of countless thousands of people all over the world when they realize people don't make you feel bad. It's created by your own thoughts. So it's not so frightening. It's more understandable. It's always true. It's true for you and it's true for everybody. So you start to have more understanding. Oh, given what they're thinking, no wonder they're feeling that way. And I've asked tens of thousands of people, literally all over the world, what are you feeling? And you get all kinds of answers. That's normal. And then you ask, where do you think whatever you're feeling, where do you think that feeling is coming from? No one says, well, that's obvious. It's the thoughts created in my head at this very moment. No one says that. You can try this at home. Ask someone, why are you stressed? Oh, I have a lot of work to do.
Mm.
Why are you stressed? Oh, the traffic is getting to me. Why are you down today? Oh, it's cloudy. Why are you so upset? Well, that person said something to me that really upset me. Now, there's no science behind this that the world makes us feel that way. One researcher pulled together 600 research studies that showed that external circumstance does not create experience, because if you have enough people in any situation, you're going to have all different responses in that situation. And it's not determined by the circumstance, it's determined by how people are thinking and what people are thinking. This is one of the three principles, and it's changed people's lives. I've done trainings in some of the largest corporations in the United States. They love this because when you begin to recognize your stress as thought and drop out of that thinking, when people have less stress, they work more effectively and more productively. They communicate better. They make better decisions, right? So it's incredibly relevant to people in business. Well, I have friends all over the world teaching this in prisons because it helps genuinely rehabilitate people and help them begin to recognize and access their innate well-being. And so they don't tend to get into trouble at all or as much, which makes a huge difference. And they don't tend to end up back in prison, right? So it's enormous benefit to those people and to society. It's being taught in schools all over the world, right? The power of thought to create what we're feeling. And if we understand that through insight, it makes a big difference. We get better and better at going through our inevitable downtimes. We become more resilient.
Yeah, I really resonate with this because when I first started getting into Sid's work, I remember there was a period of time which just something hit me so hard, and for 7 months, I cried every single day. Like I could not stop. This beautiful feeling of connectedness from life just pervading my day, and in turn, everything that was happening around me. This is when I got a really beautiful insight into the fact that we're living in an inside out reality. Was that once I saw this for myself, that my thoughts and my feelings are caused from my thoughts, and my feelings are just a sort of an indicator towards the quality of thought, and there's a deeper intelligence that's at play. um, when I saw that, then, like, similar to what you were saying with relationships, I was only entering relationships which um, weren't really the dynamic that I was looking for from the start. When I had this experience, boom, my girlfriend popped out of nowhere. This Friday, 2 days from now, it'll be a year since we've been dating. My coaching practice completely took off the ground. I quit my job as a banker and had the courage to start my coaching practice. All these things unfolded from this place of just seeing the inside out nature of my being. And I really resonate with that because it's been wonderful for me since I've seen this happen in my life.
It's a beautiful thing that we can now say we understand what's universally true of every human being on this planet, that all human beings think, all human beings are conscious beings, all human beings have a mind that's actually rooted in that transcendent intelligence that's creating the universe. So that when any human being, when their thinking quiets down, they become more present, more awake, more alive, and they feel better naturally. And then they have more knowing, more understanding, more common sense. They become more creative. And it's built into us to be that way. That's what's meant by innate well-being. It's inborn, it's innate. Everybody, no one is broken. No one is broken. And I've worked with people that have spent their life in mental institutions, or people who have spent their life in prisons. And when their head clears, they become fully present and they become kind and warm, even loving, because it's built into us. But we all get into trouble just because of one reason. We get caught up in thoughts, primarily judgmental thoughts, that we think are true. And then the feeling that we get from that thinking, we think is caused by something outside of us. That's the one thing that all of us at times suffer, some more than others.
And what would you say to those people that are suffering that, if they're in a state of maybe anxiety, or they're in a state of whatever the feeling is, and things are happening so fast that they're not able to see that their experience is being generated via thought? How does somebody snap out of that experience when things are sort of happening in real time?
Well, first of all, it's helpful for people when they talk to someone who has hope, who says with certainty, I know you can change. People change by insight all over the world. That's how anybody changes. You get a new thought, and something that was difficult gets easier, and you're no different than anybody else. You're built to have new thinking. You're built to have insights. Look at all the insights you've had already in your life. There's no reason you can't have an insight about something that is true. So I don't have to convince you of this because it's true. We all think. I can go anywhere in the world, Robert, and say, everybody thinks. And I've never had anybody say, I don't. And if I say, there will be times when you'll recognize even now that when your thinking changes, your feelings will change. Right? You're stressing out. A good friend comes to the door and you go, hey, oh man, how you doing? What happened to your stress? Well, you stopped thinking it, so it went away. And so it's not hard to give people example. Oh, right there, I saw your thinking just changed. Look at how you're laughing now. And a minute ago, you were so serious. Right? It's not hard. I mean, I've taught this. I have colleagues that are teaching this to like 4 and 5-year-old kids. They get it. Why? Because it's true. Because it'll resonate as true in people if it's true. It's not a theory. It's not a theory. Once people start seeing whatever I'm thinking at this moment is always connected to what I'm feeling in this moment, as soon as people see that, they'll start catching themselves all over the place and see it more and more and more. And then it reinforces itself. You're just learning how all human beings come to have experience. Mental activity is created in the moment, and whatever thoughts are there immediately turn into the feeling we're in. It's just like in a movie. People, if you took somebody from a culture where they'd never seen a movie and didn't know what it was and took them into a dark room, and all of a sudden there's this moving image of a forest on fire in front of them, they might even run out of the theater, as people used to do in movie theaters before they understood how they worked. And then so you take somebody who is a skeptic and you say, come with me, and you walk them back into the projection room and you say, look at this camera, this film projector. See the film? There's always film in the projector as long as there's a movie. And it comes down through here, and see there's a light in the projector and it shines through the film and it projects that image up onto the wall, and see how it's plugged into the wall and it has a power source. Well, that's like human beings. Mind is our power source. Consciousness is what, thought is what keeps film in our human being projector. And consciousness is what brings to life any thought so that we feel and experience it. That's how movies work. They're just thought brought to life in the moment. It's same with humans. You have a sad thought, you feel sad. That thought falls away, you feel something different.
Is it that easy?
Everybody says that. I can't tell you how often I've heard people say, because I said that. I had been a psychologist 10 years and it's very complicated. And I had been studying all these theories. There's so many different theories in 3 fundamental schools. People who deal with cognition, people who deal with feelings and experience, the existential humanistic people, and then the behaviorists who deal with behavior. And within each of those schools, there's tons of theories. Every book proposes, you want to hear somebody's theory, just ask them, where do you think what you're feeling is coming from? And you'll hear that person's theory. But they're theories. Sid Banks found facts. We think, whatever we think is what we will experience when our thinking changes. You'll start, once you start looking for it, you see it everywhere in yourself and other people. You'll see people thinking, and you'll see people feeling whatever they're thinking about. And you'll see when what they think about changes, that their feelings change. You can see it's really easy. And then you start seeing it in yourself, and then, oh, what a blessing. Because without seeing this, we'll think about things for very long periods of time that make us feel tension, stress, or upset. And when you start realizing that it's your thinking causing that, you start letting go of that thinking more and more and more of the time. You just drop it, come back to the present moment. And then that old thinking falls away and you get new thinking. We're built for that.
It's so interesting because you think that you have to think a solution into existence for the fact that you're thinking, but it doesn't necessarily work like that, because if the only thing that I'm experiencing is my thought in the moment, then that means that I wouldn't have to find some big solution. And I'm probably not going to find it in the contents of my thought, because that's the very thing that I'm suffering anyways. So like you said, you're thinking long and hard about a problem, but that doesn't necessarily change the problem at all. And it's interesting because the thing that comes up for me is, and I'm sure for a lot of people, is, do you mean to say just stop thinking about our problems? But it's like when you actually do it, it feels so good. So
well, I had to learn, when I started learning this, Robert, I had to learn that if I stopped thinking about something in a way that was creating tension, stress, or upset, the first benefit was I became unburdened by that thinking, and I relaxed. My head cleared, so I had more mental clarity and more presence. And I wasn't avoiding, what I had to find out was I wasn't avoiding dealing with something. I was just opening up to greater clarity. Like if you're driving your car and you get mud on your windshield, isn't it a benefit to clear it off so you can see where you're going?
absolutely, yeah.
Right? Is there ever a downside to using the windshield wiper when you can't see through the window? Is there ever a downside of letting go of thoughts that cloud our view of life? Sid called it contaminate our view. And that when we would let go of thoughts that create tension, stress, and upset, it uncontaminates our view, and we have pure thought. We see life as it is, in other words, through a clear glass, not through the distortion of our negative thinking. Right? So there's no downside. And then I had to discover, when my head is clear, I start to feel better for no reason. And when I feel better, I do better. You have to find that out. Do you do better when you're stressing out, or when people are in a life and death situation? What do they say? Think yourself into a frenetic, stressful state, or do they say stay calm? And what's the benefit of being calm in a life and death situation? You have greater clarity. Plus, every human being, when their head is clear, has access to new and fresh thinking that's helpful. It comes from this deeper intelligence. That's why it's called wisdom. If what occurred to people wasn't helpful, they wouldn't call it wisdom. I just didn't know every human being is connected to that intelligence. No one is wiser than you. We just don't know we have access to that deeper intelligence at any moment. Anybody.
And in terms of, so let's say you get a glimpse of this reality, and your habitual way of thinking goes into a certain pattern.
Yeah.
Is it just a matter of seeing it more and more, or what's the process of sort of coming from
Well,
that?
whenever we go into a habit or pattern of thinking that's conditioned or that's more negative thought, worry, judgment, negative thoughts that really lower our spirits, as soon as we go into a habit like that, there's a feeling. So instead of feelings being a statement about the world, I'm sad because of this event, I'm angry because of what this person said to me, the feeling becomes an invitation. It lets us know that we're caught in thought, and is an invitation to fall open so that this deeper intelligence can bring us feelings of well-being and new and fresh responsive thinking. Common sense. That's where common sense comes from. That's why we say, wow, this person has a lot of common sense. When they feel stressed, they let go of that thinking so that they can access greater common sense.
My instinct is to want to prove you wrong, but it's so enjoyable to be in that feeling that it's I actually can't help it.
I know it's hard to prove that it's wrong that we think, because it's true. It's hard to prove that it's wrong that whatever we think we're going to feel, because you can observe that and you can even do research on it. It's scientific. It's logical. The logic of the psyche, psychological, right? It once you start seeing it, and you can find out from your own experience that when you let go of thoughts that weigh heavily on you, if at some point you don't just start feeling some relaxation or relief or more contentment or more peace of mind, that's where peace of mind comes from. You let go of thoughts that disturb you or weigh on you. And then we call that living in the now. So there's tons of books about living in the now right now, right? The beauty and power of the now, right? Because when we're in the now, all that psychological burden is set down. We're not avoiding life. We're just dropping into presence, the now. It's very ordinary. We're born in the now. We're born not caught up in our thinking. We don't even have concepts when we're born to get caught up into. So we fall out of our thinking that burdens or depresses or angers or upsets or judges, and we start experiencing more peace of mind. Our senses come alive, so we start having more enjoyment, and we start realizing our connection to people in life, so we experience love and caring and compassion and those kind of feelings. And it's built into us to have well-being. Because I've seen no exceptions to this. Very, very troubled people, when their head's clear, feel better. And when they feel better, they communicate better, they make better decisions, they get along better with people. So it becomes more and more evident to anyone as they reflect on this and consider it. Consider the fact that we think. And that whatever we think, don't be concerned about what you're thinking. Whatever I'm thinking at this moment is what I'm feeling. They go hand in hand. You can't think sad and feel happy. You can't think stress and feel loving. It's whatever we think we're going to be feeling. And when the good news is we have free will, so we can also, like we tell our teenage kids, close your laptop, you've had enough screen time. So Sid Banks would say, if you stay caught up in your conceptual mind, you won't experience well-being, even though you have it. You won't experience peace of mind. You won't experience enjoyment of the senses. If you go for a walk in the woods and you're thinking the whole time, you won't see beauty. I don't care how beautiful it is. I live in a beautiful place. I've gone for lots of walks with people, and some people don't even see the trees around them. And when people begin to fall out of their thinking, they see beauty everywhere, even in the city. Just wow. It's all around us, because our senses come alive when we're in the now. And then we get more common sense. So we deal better with problems and with other people.
Yeah, I had this experience a few weeks back where I was just driving down the street that I've driven down a couple thousand times, and there's just a massive tree that's hanging over some of the electrical lines, and it's going almost halfway into the street. Mm-hmm. And I've never seen this tree in 3-4 years. I've never seen this tree in 3-4 years. And all of a sudden, it came about because I tapped into that feeling for a moment, and then I opened my eye, my eyes were open because I was driving, but I tapped into that feeling, and all of a sudden I noticed this tree, and I thought to myself, how many other things do I not even notice because I'm so caught up in the way that I'm thinking? I'm not smelling the fragrance of the leaves from the tree or the flower that's passing by. I'm not hearing the birds chirping beside me. I'm not seeing the opportunities that life is giving me because I'm so caught up in this thought process.
That's right. That's a beautiful example, isn't it? It's a very ordinary example. One time I was in my office. It was after I started learning these principles, and I had to mail something at the post office, and I walked to the post office, and it's like you could go 2 blocks, this 1 block and 1 block. That you could go around. It's on the corner of a square, so you can go around the square either direction. I got to the post office, and I couldn't tell you which way I had walked to get to the post office. I couldn't tell you if I had come around this way or around that way. I was so in my head. And it just, I started laughing, and I said, I wonder if I can walk through our town and be in it. Actually experience this beautiful little town. And it was a very different walk coming back. I worked with a woman who was clinically depressed, and she thought she was depressed because of things completely out of her control. You know, when I was born, I got bad biochemistry, and that's why I suffer depression. See, science is now showing every thought we have creates biochemistry. So most people who are depressed are thinking very negative thoughts 80% of the day. No wonder they feel horrible, right? So she began to learn that it's not something out of her control, her past, her biochemistry. She started seeing, oh my gosh, look at me, I'm just thinking negativity all day long. And she started to catch herself and come back in the present moment. Any negative thoughts you're caught up in begin to fall away. That's why people go on vacation. They're hoping that'll happen. The stress falls away and they go, oh, God, it feels so good. And then we'll blame the vacation rather than I'll feel good anytime, even at work when I fall out of stressful thinking. So this woman who was depressed began to wake up to the fact that she was a thinker and fall out of a lot of the negative thinking she was doing. And she started spending a lot greater percentage of her day in the present moment rather than preoccupied with negative thought. And she comes in and says, Dicken, I've lived here my whole life. I've never seen the beautiful colors in the fall before. She had tears in her eyes. It says, so beautiful. I just haven't seen it before.
I remember you even, there was one story that you told of, I think she was a patient, a young patient, and she was really afraid of a spider. And
oh yeah, oh my gosh, yeah. She was in high school and she came to see me. Her mom sort of told her she had to because she was fighting all the time with her younger sister. I mean, they really would get into it. And kids are fun to share this with because they pick up on it very quickly. They begin to recognize, oh my gosh, all my anger is not caused by my sister. It's created in the moment by my own angry thinking. That's a life changer. It was for her, right? So she got to the point where she couldn't blame her sister for making her angry anymore. Right? And then she became more resilient and she'd get upset still, but she'd get over it quickly. That's one of the hallmarks of psychological well-being is you're resilient. You don't get stuck in feelings that create tension or stress or upset. They just sort of flow through and you get over it quickly. Right? So she became so resilient, it was unbelievable. And on the last day of our session, she had never talked to me that she had a lifelong extreme phobia of spiders. And I'd say, well, how extreme? She says, we live in this old house. She says, I swear the spiders have a spider factory up in the attic. And there's so many holes and cracks that they keep coming into my bedroom. And if I see a spider in my bedroom, I would scream hysterically, run out of the room. My mother and sister could tell by the scream and where it came from that I had seen a spider. They'd come in and find the spider and take care of it. But I couldn't even go back into that room for a couple of days. I'd sleep on the couch. I'd be so terrified. When I started realizing I'm not afraid of spiders, spiders can't make me fearful. Spiders can't create feelings in me like they have some kind of magical, creative, divine power, right? She said, it's just, I have a lot of fearful thinking about spiders, but it's not the spiders that I'm afraid of. It's my own thoughts that I'm afraid of. They create all my fear. And as she started seeing it was just her thoughts, she said, once I realized that, she said, the next time I saw a spider in my room while she was working with me, she didn't tell me though, I screamed. I only went to the door rather than out of the room. I watched my mom and sister get the spider. And then I went back into my room and got back in bed and fell asleep. Said that never happened before. She said, the next time I saw a spider, I screamed, but I didn't even leave the room. She said the next time I saw a spider was in a bathroom, and I didn't freak out at all. I didn't even have fearful thoughts. I just went, I've never looked at a spider up close. And she moved closer and said, wow, they're sort of cool. And she got a piece of uh, paper towel and picked up the spider and carried it outside and let it go.
Oh.
Right. Now, the only thing that was happening is her understanding about what a feeling is and how it's thought created. That changed. She had insight into the truth of that. So if you know it's your own thinking, it's never so scary or so upsetting. You're going, okay, I'm having these thoughts. It's making me feel this way. Big deal. If I leave them alone, if I leave the thoughts alone, come back to the present, go about my day, they'll go away. They always have, they always will. It's not a big deal. Those thoughts can't hurt me. They're just flowing through me and they temporarily create a feeling. It's just some thoughts. So once I have clients who start going, wow, it's just thought, I know they're doing great. Just thought. It's just like at night, you have a nightmare, you wake up and you go, oh, thank God it was just a dream. It's just some thoughts I was having. It's not real.
Yeah, and it becomes real when you invest yourself into that thinking. Becomes something that actually starts to happen in reality when you're giving it so much time, energy, and attention. And I really love what you said about uh, movie theater analogy, where it's just just walk out of the projector room. Just don't stop watching the movie, and then it will you'll naturally just feel better because um, you're not you're not putting yourself in that position where you're watching that content that is making you feel that way. Not that the movie can make you feel that way, but it's in the context of what we're speaking about, the thoughts. You're feeling your thoughts.
That's very nice. I mean, it's nice that you're seeing that. I can see how it's been helping you, Robert. And it's something that anybody can learn. Anybody can learn. I've taught people of all ages and backgrounds and cultures, and we all work the same way. Right? This creative power generates our thinking, which creates our senses and feelings. Everybody works that way, inside out. Everybody, no exception. And we can at any moment come back. In my book, I called it Coming Home. Just drop out of everything we're thinking and just come back to the present moment and just rest there and experience that peace. Right? And gain the benefits that happen to any human being when they're present. They'll start to feel better and start to think better for free. It's given to us for free. So you begin to be more and more grateful that all we need to do is get our ego out of the way. And then this deeper intelligence will bring us feelings that uplift and thinking that's creatively responsive to any circumstance we're in. Any. And it's a beautiful thing to realize.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for this so much, Dick, and I really appreciate it. And if there's one thing you could leave the viewers with, what would that be?
Well, if you're curious, the one thing I would recommend is check out Sydney Banks. It's sort of cool to hear a guy who had a ninth grade education who was crippled with insecurity and anxiety, who then became a world teacher and began to lecture in universities and to auditorium fulls of doctors or full of engineers, or people from all over the world started coming to hear him talk, and now it's spreading into. We have an annual conference that's usually held in London. We've been doing it online past 2 years, but we get 1,300 people from 40 countries coming to continue to learn more about this. There are centers in almost every country, and it's been remarkable just in the past 33 years to go from knowing pretty much everybody who knew Sid Banks to there being tens of thousands of people all over the world talking about, we live in the world of thought. We can wake up out of thinking that burdens us. We can experience the benefits of being fully present, and we can fill up with beautiful feeling and be guided by a deeper intelligence. What good news for anybody. So there's a website called Sid, SYD, banks.com, has free videos, and they're adding more of Sid's talks. It'd be a good place to start, or you could take a look at his books. There's about 5 books. There's one called The Missing Link that is a beautiful overview of everything I talked about today. And there's other teaching stories that Sid wrote. He thought stories were one of the best ways to teach people about a new way of looking at life. He said because it would get in under the intellect where it would resonate as true. So those are just some suggestions. If you want to hear more of my talks, there's hundreds of them on YouTube. So.
And how can the viewers reach out to you if they want to personally connect with you, or if they're if they're inclined to possibly work with you? What's a way that they can reach out to you?
I have a website, the number 3 principlesmentoring.com, or if you just Google my name, it should come up, my website. And there's a contact page there, so you can send me an email. So I'm not doing a lot of individual work these days because I'm doing so many training programs for practitioners, and I'm involved in projects that are bringing this understanding into schools and prisons. And I'm on the 3 Principles Global Community Board, and we're really trying to help spread this word, this good news throughout the world. But I'd be glad to respond to anybody who wanted to write.
Thank you, Dicken. I appreciate your generosity, and it sounds awesome, the initiatives that you're up to with the the schools and the prisons and the global community.
Wonderful. And I worked for 16 years in big business doing leadership programs, and it was remarkable to see whole cultures become healthier and how that radically transformed their business and their relationships and their job satisfaction. And it's very, very exciting.
I can only imagine just seeing one or 2 individuals light up when you're speaking to them versus taking it in even bigger context. I imagine it's very nice to see.
It's very rewarding. I mean, I want this for everybody. I want people to feel more at peace, more at ease, more content, more loving. Certainly. Sid Banks would say the more you have insight into these principles, it'll bring you automatically more fully to the present moment. and you will experience more love and understanding. You will. It's built into us for that. So that's, I've never come across anything else that had that guarantee. So I want it for everybody. I want people to live in well-being and have an easier time of life. That's what got me going when I was 22 years old. That's what inspired me to go into psychology, is these teenagers were suffering terribly, and I wanted them to be able to learn things that would make their life easier.
It's really beautiful. You dedicated your life towards understanding this and helping other people, and it's beautiful too, because if the only way, even for anybody who's watching right now, if you got a good feeling from watching this or from listening to Dicken speak, it's because the you have the function of well-being within you. Like you wouldn't be able to understand, you wouldn't be able to feel that if you wouldn't be able to resonate if it wasn't within you. So
Beautiful. That's a great point, Robert. Not only do, without understanding where experience comes from, not only do we blame our tension, stress, and upset on the outside world, we also blame our positive feelings on the outside world. I feel good because the sun came out. I feel good because people are nice to me. And Sid Banks says any human being, when they fall into a quiet mind, will feel good for no reason. It's just built into us. Our well-being is truly innate.
that sounds amazing, because it's not the matter of like somebody giving you a smile that will make you happy or somebody giving you a frown that will make you upset. It's just, oh, I feel good for absolutely no reason.
Yeah.
And it's not necessary for me to um, have good conversations for me to feel happy. I feel happy and then I have good conversations, and every other permutation and combination of that.
I had a friend who said, I can't feel good unless I'm off hiking in the mountains. So she would wait long periods of time until once again she could get out hiking in the mountains. And then she learned these principles. And then it was like, wow, the mountain feeling is available to me anytime, any place. I thought it was caused by nature. Now I'm seeing it is my nature. And everything changed for her. And like you, then suddenly her relationship started, just fell into place, and she's been with the guy ever since. Same guy. So it is extremely practical.
And we are nature. Like, instead of having to go out into the mountains, I'm like you said, we're the same makeup as everything else. It's that formless intelligence that's powering the thoughts and powering the feelings, and
Yeah.
it's in this universal mind or this universal intelligence that um, you know, we don't have to walk to the mountain. For me, I got rid of my bed. I similar story to you, like got
Yeah.
rid of my bed, turned my room into a yoga center, doing 3, 4, 5 hours of yoga per day, doing different courses and all these different things. And it's interesting because now I'm seeing that, I have a bed actually again. I got my bed back because
Yeah.
I couldn't
Yeah.
bear it. I wanted a bed back. But I'm seeing like even the good feeling that I got from having, like, it's not from having the bed. I had a good feeling and I decided to get a
Yeah.
bed. It's mutually exclusive.
I
So
like to say we start doing things not in order to have well-being, but as we do those things as an expression of our well-being. When I'm feeling good, I love to do things with people. I love to do yoga. I love to do I love to go to movies, but I'm not miserable in doing those things so I can feel better. Right? It's an expression of our well-being, natural. You get to enjoy life even more of the time. So that's a good note to end on, Robert.
thank you so much, Dick, and I really appreciate you coming in
Yeah.
today. And I will. I'll put a link for all the websites, the Sydney Bank's website, 3PGC, the global community, and also
Oh, that's
Dicken's
good.
website.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we'll source everything. Thank you so much, Dicken, for showing up, and thank you everyone for tuning in. This has been Robert and Dicken on Innate Wellbeing, and we will see you on the next episode. Thank you for tuning in.